with Curare, your online source for new hot physician jobs and some of the best physician job advice on the web. I'm here today with Ian Sons, one of our managing specialists, and I'm Jerry Ramusak, CEO. We're going to be answering some viewer questions along with some of the recruiters that work with us questions based on candidates they're working with now. We'll dive right in, and first question for the week looks like a long one. Thanks for taking my question. My recruiter has set up an interview for me just outside of New York City. The group will not share any compensation details until I am on site. The lack of communication is worrisome. Should I go on the interview?
I'm happy to take this one. This is a really common thing that we deal with. Obviously, when you're going to learn about a job opportunity, you don't want to waste your time. And although it's maybe not the primary factor, everybody wants to know how much money you're going to make, what you're going to get paid, what your earnings potential could be. The reality is that a lot of employers disclose that information after a first interview. Really what you should think about when you're going on this first visit with an employer is this is your opportunity to make a good first impression. This is about identifying are personalities going to be a good match. They already know about your credentials. They're not going to be asking you, significant information about where you've done your training and things like this. This is really about getting a sense of who you are and what kind of value they think that you can bring to the practice. If they believe that you're the right person for the job, the money is going to be there. But just keep in mind, usually, I would say at least 75% of the time, that first interview, you don't talk about money at all. So, the one thing you need to be concerned about, as with most physicians looking for job opportunities, is the volume there to support your earnings. Be more concerned about being able to be busy and less concerned maybe about that first year initial base salary or guarantee. The money's going to be there as long as the volume is there. But you just need to identify, do I like these people? Do I like the facilities? Can I see myself working here? Am I going to be happy? That's really what that first visit is about. And one of the best indicators of that is when you're there, talk to some of the physicians who work there now. Are they happy? How long have they been there? Do they feel like they're making good money? If all those things are present, then you're probably in a pretty good spot.
Something I'll add here too is that since this was a New York City example, we work throughout major metropolitan areas, we work throughout rural areas across the country, and I've really come to find that when you're in these busy metropolitan areas, especially the East Coast metropolitan areas, New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, a lot of these smaller practices, they don't have a dedicated person set aside for recruiting. It's one of the physicians handling the job. And frankly, they just don't have time to hurry up and get these details to you. They want to meet you in person and set the action from there. So in cities, I see that as really common, more so than in more rural areas or smaller communities. And the other piece of advice I have for this question too, since you were working through a recruiter, would be if you're apprehensive prior to going on the interview, have your recruiter do a little fishing for you and have that recruiter throw out some salary ranges or financial ranges to the client just to make sure you're in the same ballpark and make sure that there's not going to be too big of a bridge to gap and that it isn't a waste of time for you to go on that interview. That could be a step that you could take to further solidify the interview coming up.
Yeah. One more thing I'll add real quickly is a lot of what you're going to be offered will be dependent upon how well that interview goes.
Absolutely.
Certainly, if you go there and you knock their socks off, they're going to be willing to offer you a lot more than they would otherwise, and the employer knows that. And so I think that's part of the reason why they may be cautious about offering up a number. They don't want to undersell the job. They don't want to overpromise. They really want their level of interest in you to dictate what their offer is going to be.
Excellent. Moving on to the next question. Hi, I've been practicing for 12 years in a Midwest college town. My wife and I are having a baby and are moving back to her hometown in the Deep South. I have 2 interviews with self-professed faith-based practices, and I am religiously neutral. How should I approach this subject during the interviews? That's a tough one. I mean, religion on these physician job interviews, I've been doing this for 18 years, and it's never really played a factor for me. We work with faith-based practices across the nation where they go as far as, say, praying every morning when they join the practice opportunity. I think it's a real personal situation, and if you're personally faith neutral and you're going to a faith-based practice, go there with an open mind and see how things proceed and move forward. If you go there and you feel as though the faith is too much of a push forward, maybe the practice isn't for you, and you got to reassess the situation. But I say the best idea is just go with an open mind and decide whether it's something you could live with or something that you're not interested in after the fact. I think there's different practice setups everywhere, and this is just a different aspect of a practice.
Totally agree. I mean, it's just about your own comfort level with something like that. Some people, like Jerry said, are going to be much more adamant about talking about those types of things. You know, for instance, like he said, maybe getting together for prayer before the office opens. Maybe they pray with patients, whatever it might be. But there's a wide variance there. And like he said, I think just go and kind of draw your own conclusions and see if it's something that works for you personally.
Excellent. Hi guys, I'm a longtime viewer. This is my first time asking a question. I'm from northern Indiana and just signed a contract with a $20,000 sign-on bonus. I will receive half the bonus when I start and the other half at the end of my first year. Is this typical? I wouldn't say it's typical. I think it's a trend that some facilities are moving in, where they offer you a signing bonus at the signing and then some after a certain amount of time in practice. I like to call those retention bonuses more than signing bonuses. And so it could just be a matter of semantics in that case, but nonetheless, if I'm signing a contract and I'm getting a sign-on bonus, I would try to push for that money up front and then have it amortized over a period of time so the taxes get taken out at a reasonable pace. But have I seen that? Yeah, I've seen it. Is it typical? No, it's not typical. Most of the time, your signing bonus is coming up front when you sign the contract. That's a major incentive to sign, in fact. And one of the reasons why contracts get signed on a timely basis in many cases. So I don't think it's typical, but I think it's a trend that we're seeing, and I'm seeing it a little bit more often than I was, say, 2 years ago. And I like to stay with the signing bonus being called a signing bonus, and something like that being called a signing bonus and then a retention bonus after a year. Any thoughts?
Yeah, something I would add to that is, in my experience, there's really three kind of bonuses that are going to be offered in this situation when you're committing to a new job. The first we've talked about, which is a signing bonus due upon signature of the contract. The second would be a commencement bonus, which is due when you actually begin practicing, and that's a fairly common thing that we see. And then the third would be what we already discussed, a retention bonus, either maybe 6 months into practicing or 1 year, I would say is normal after practicing, where you're rewarded with another bonus. One other thing I'll mention is that I know Jerry touched on the amortization of signing bonuses, and this is an important factor to understand. Usually when that is how they're going to structure it, this is for your benefit. This is so that you don't have to incur a large tax liability. You know, for instance, if you're receiving a signing bonus of $20,000 or $30,000 that is rolled into your annual income, you're going to be at a pretty high tax rate. So them amortizing this over a period of usually 1 or 2 years, somewhat dependent upon the amount, is going to be good for you because that limits your tax liability. However, what you want to understand is you are in essence going to be signing a promissory note. It's going to look as if this is being given to you as a loan, but don't be confused by that. That is how a hospital or an employer needs to structure it in order to allow for this amortization. So usually it will be a prorated portion of that signing bonus or commencement bonus, whatever it might be, that is going to be quote-unquote forgiven each month that you work, or every 2 weeks that you work, whatever the pay period would be. A certain prorated amount will be forgiven. So, you know, if it's amortized over 2 years, you work the full 2 years, that entire amount is forgiven. However, if you've signed a 2-year contract, it's amortized over 2 years, you only work there for 1 year, something happens, you find a different job that you'd rather pursue, whatever it might be, keep in mind that usually now you will be on the hook for the second half of that signing bonus. There's almost always now, I mean, I see it very rarely otherwise, but almost always now there is strings attached. There are strings attached, rather, to a signing bonus. You're not going to get someone to write you a $30,000 check and have the ability to walk away 2 months later without having to pay that money back. That's just not how it works. But it's a compromise. Both parties have a little bit of skin in the game, so to speak, and it ends up, like I said, being a large benefit to you, because instead of getting a $30,000 check where you've got to pay maybe half of that in taxes, you get the full value of that bonus at $30,000 by amortizing that over 2 years.
Thanks. Finally, I just received a contract for my dream job just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. They gave me 1 week to review it. My attorney said he would need 2 weeks, and he is out of town as well. I feel I need a professional to review it. What should I do? Wait for your attorney to get back into town and have them review it? Call the client and say that you're going to need a little bit more time? Fact is that it's still a buyer's market in most parts of the country, even Asheville, North Carolina, even your dream job. If they're not willing to wait an extra week, it's probably not the dream group to join, and probably not the type of group that you want to hang out with, so to say, not the friends you want to be with. Most of the time, I've seen these deadlines come and go, And as long as you're sincere in your interest and keep the client informed, your future employer informed about what's going on, extensions are granted all the time. With that being said, if you're in a competitive situation and you feel like you have your dream job and perhaps they do have several other candidates that are considering the opportunity, maybe you got to take the risk and just go for it and hope everything works out. I recommend the professional consultation of the attorney. If your attorney's out of town and can't get to it for 2 weeks, hire a different attorney. There's plenty of them out there that'll help you. The key is to always find somebody that's dealt with specifically physician contracts in the past, because they're their own beasts, and they should be reviewed by somebody that has experience with them. Again, I think the key is to just communicate with your future employer, let them know the situation, and 9.9 times out of 10 they're going to be willing to work with you, because ultimately they want you to join their team if they gave you a contract offer.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there's that much more to add.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they want you there, they're going to be willing to wait, and if not, then that's kind of the decision that
Right.
they're making. It's kind of out of your hands at that point.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, that's the last of the questions that we have this week. If you have any questions and you want answered, give us a ring at 800-880-2028 or send us an email at info@physicianrecruiting.com, and we'll be glad to hit it up next week with coffee at Curare. See you next week.